I'm not just a lung cancer survivor, I'm also a caretaker. My husband died of lung cancer in 2010. Having lived through that first and then getting my own diagnosis was kind of getting thrown against a wall. My husband was technically in remission. He was, we had him for 12 years after his diagnosis. And he made a doctor's appointment. And he was diagnosed shortly thereafter with lung cancer. I was diagnosed with breast cancer 6 years ago. My doctor came to me that same day that I had had my breast MR done and said, "You need a CAT scan. We're looking at," and he showed me the little area that we're looking at. After I had the CAT scan done, of course, I went into their office and I knew right then and there that it was lung cancer the same day. Probably the worst part of my diagnosis was having to tell my kids, because they had lost their father to lung cancer. So now, okay, mom's got it. So I think that was, the worst part of the whole thing, was talking to my kids about it. I asked no questions. I literally asked no questions. I didn't want to know. And through therapy and talking with my doctors and everything else, I realize now that that's not the only option that's out there. There's life, and there's so much to enjoy and look forward to and be hopeful about. There's a lot of different cancers out there. There's a lot of funding, and lung cancer is the #1 killer of cancers across the board, yet it is the least funded cancer out there. It's not just about educating people with lung cancer, it's educating people that don't know anybody and trying to help remove the stigma of smoking. Because I took care of Jack while he was going through his lung cancer, it gave me one perspective that I can share with family members of somebody going through cancer. And going through it myself, I can also speak to the patient and say, this is my story. Being able to share both sides of that story is a great impact on me. I share my voice because I want people to see hope in lung cancer, and that lung cancer doesn't have to be the end of life. It can be the beginning of life for anyone.